good evening, or good day to you, into the hinterlands. Hello, Jesse Hinterlander.
Hello.
Hello. Nice tree that you have.
Thank you. Thank you. I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. It's a very natural way of meeting you. When we just met off the air, I thought, well, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's I'm in the hinterland, so I'm trying to make it authentic.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. Yes, as we previously discussed, the hinterland internet speed and quality is a bit wobbly. So I think we'll take this as a video hello, as a proof of existence, which makes me very happy, and continue audio only from your side.
All right. I'll turn off the video.
Very nice. Yeah, I thought we could have a chat. We haven't had one in a while. I've been recording some podcasts with friends and people, and you know, things are happening all around the world, and so I always think a personal update is nice. But since um, we all have our own ways of spreading magic into the world or something, we could also just record it for posterity.
Cool.
I heard you're building a house.
Yes. Building a house. Building like two houses, sort of two small buildings. Um, because the place where we wanted to put a house is not close enough to where we can get sun, so we have to build a little building just to house the solar equipment, and then we can run a wire from that to the actual house.
So, do I hear that right? That one, oh yeah, I think you tweeted about this too. It's like the solar equipment shed, and that's a
Uh-huh.
small house for sort of uh, a carbon copy of the sun or something.
A carbon copy? Yeah.
Like
Like a carbon copy? What do you mean?
I mean, like a sort of avatar, you know, the house of the rising sun, like
Ah,
the
right, right.
a house in which sort of the sun lives. I don't know what's the perfect vocabulary for
Oh,
this,
I
but
see. Right, right. Like you capture the energy from the sun and you put it somewhere. It's a place to put the sun energy. Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean we're sort of thinking about Alex put out my girlfriend put out a poll on Twitter about what we should call it. And it looks like the entry that won was Sun House. We'll just call it the Sun House. And but she was also, so one of the other suggestions was Temple of Ra, and we were thinking like, oh, it'd be cool to make it. Um, and you kind of can see why people worship the sun, especially when you're depending on solar power, or like you don't have good heating, and like the sun comes out and it's just like, wow, this feels amazing. Um, so yeah, so it's like, and like the Romans, they would put, you say they had a water spigot or whatever, they put some statue of Neptune or some, like they would decorate it like as if it was a temple, because it was like this infrastructure was kind of a sacred thing. Um, and so it's kind of interesting to think about it as a sort of temple, and how do we sort of make it like acknowledge the sacredness of our energy source. Um, One of the ideas I had just today was to, on the outside of the building, there's a really cool Egyptian Book of the Dead. Uh, There's a really great translation of it. It would be cool to have like a line from that about Ra, but like in hieroglyphics and then in English translation, and just like burn it into the side of the house. Uh, just like do some wood burning on the outside. I think that would be cool.
yeah, that sounds incredibly reasonable to me. And yeah, so it is. I mean, what I just called carbon copy. What do I mean? I mean something like an earthly representation or something, right? So temple points
Right,
to
right,
exactly the right thing. Um,
right.
an avatar, I think, would be one way of saying it. Or
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. Um, but I think it's hilarious that you're building sort of a solar hut,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's the place that I think honestly my suggestion to the contest was the best, which was House of the Rising Sun, because it's
Yeah.
culturally and but that's just my opinion, man. I mean, you do you.
It's too long. It's too long. You know how, like,
Okay,
when you gotta say, like, "Hey, meet me at the X," you need it to be short, so otherwise people are gonna shorten it,
true,
you know?
true. Yeah, I have a penchant for like long-windedness sometimes. Um, and so you're building that, and then you're building a house to live, and
Yeah.
um, I don't know. I think it's very cool, and maybe we could tell some of your story, like because we met not so long ago, 1.5 years
Yeah.
ago now, I would say, and then you were very much on the road. I felt, and things have changed, and but it feels like you're um, you know not to put too much emphasis on the word final, but you seem to be closer to your final form, or your a true form of yours. Um, so I'm curious about that, or also maybe you can get into that, and maybe just how the house building is going, because maybe that's a better place to start, because I
Yeah.
think you're teaching yourself a lot, and you're learning a lot, and you're
Yeah.
doing something very real, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, no, it's a really interesting process, I think it's something I've sort of done before in various forms. I built a wattle and daub hut that was sort of like a winter residence, for my ex-wife and I, and, we had friends over and we built it, and it's, yeah, sort of made of mud and straw and sticks, and it's like this primitive structure. It's been upgraded a few times over the years and has, like, actually lasted, and now we're using it we've sort of converted it into a solar kitchen um, and living room, and then rebranded it from Mud Hut to Tea Lodge. That sounds nicer. Um, but, we hang out there. It gets very hot, so I'm trying to grow a trellis of plants up the western side to shade it a little bit. But, I built that, and then this was when I was living at my parents', like, on my family's land. Uh, we had a sort of gypsy caravan, sort of tent on wheels thing that we lived in, and we built this mud hut, and then I sort of took a turn away from being out there, and I sort of wanted to explore my own identity independent from my parents, and so we moved to the city and bought an old house, like a 100-year-old house, and renovated it. So I had that sort of construction experience as well. And renovation is very interesting because you have to cope with everything having settled and moved, and you don't know what's behind the walls. Um, Nothing is straight, nothing's square, nothing is the same dimensions, and so you just have to, like, work with the nature of the building. I mean, you can be sort of ungentle about it, but I preferred to sort of work with the nature of the building, and try to, like, respect the materials that it was made from, just like incredible heart pine from the Baltic that, was old growth, and you can't get it anymore, except out of old buildings. Um, so just, beautiful materials. But, this time it's like I feel much more uh, like, let me make a proper dwelling this time. Not, it's like the other things, one was sort of, I don't know, in the city and, with a mortgage, and it's like kind of like you're renting that, and the mud hut was kind of an experimental building. But this is and not really meant to last forever. But this one, it's like I'm really, obviously it won't last forever, but I want it to last as long as possible and be low maintenance, and sort of thinking about it over the really long haul. So how do you build something that, even if it starts to degrade a little bit, won't actually be compromised in its structure? And so yeah, it's really nice to think that way and to build that way and to take my time and just try to build it in a sturdy way with the right energy. I don't want to have any kind of energy of hurry or rushing or um, sloppiness. Like, I don't really want any of that in the house. I kind of want it to be this meditative, devotional practice to build it. That just takes its own time.
Yeah, how do you do that? I think you're a big proponent of everyday magic. We have done some great magic together, and I think we've also witnessed some great magic. Um, and as we know, you can sort of mm, speak and will things into existence. But maybe we can you can talk a bit more about that, and how do you m- put magic? What kind of spells are you putting into this
Yeah.
house building? Um,
Well, we did do some rituals when we established the sites. That just sort of like asking for the thanking the trees. Both of the sites were places that Alex picked out, and I would have built in slightly different places, but she found these spots that were just absolutely perfect, and just felt energetically right. And interestingly, part of each of the sites is located on the place where there was a very large tree at one time, and then that tree, it was like a big canopy tree, and then that tree fell and rotted away, and so it left a natural clearing. So there was only like small trees there. So we did have to cut down some smaller trees to clear enough space to build in, but largely they were natural clearings, and they sort of had this energy of the trees that had created that clearing had defended it for a long time from other trees, and then had had died and uh, given it up. And so, kind of thanking the trees that established the clearings, thanking the trees that we had to cut down, and just asking for blessings on the site and their life there. So we did kick off with that when we had selected the sites. And I don't know, I mean, I guess, like, there's something a little bit, I mean, there's aspects of the construction ritual that do feel kind of magical. I think I tweeted about this, like, arranging the lines of power or something, and it was just like, you start with this spot on the earth that's not flat and not level, and we're not gonna make it flat or level because we don't have big equipment to, like, push the dirt around with. Um and it's not necessary. And we want to be gentle and, like, not disturb the roots more than we have to. Um, and so it's like, yeah, now you have to establish, but you want the house to be level and flat, and for structural reasons and aesthetic reasons and so forth. And so now you have to establish this grid on top of the earth. But how do you do that? Like, how do you actually, like, make this virtual structure in the air where you're going to build a house and then have it be stable so that you can build up to it and then put everything in the right place. Um, and so that was an interesting process. You kind of set up these batter boards, just like stakes with, like, cross pieces on them, and then you put nails on those, and you run strings, and you do a lot of measuring. I use lasers, um, laser levels, and laser plumb lines, and to line everything up, and then sort of, like, start digging, and it just feels like, I don't know, there's something almost ritualistic about it, um, fetishistic or something. It's like we're gonna establish the straight line and the right angle on this land that doesn't have any notion of what a straight out line or a right angle is. There's no straight lines, there's no right angles. Um, so it's like pulling something out of nature, or adding something onto nature. I don't know. But yeah, it's just like, and it's a process that it's kind of like, well, here you are doing something that's gonna, I'm making something I'm arranging something that's going to turn into immovable objects, that will stay there for 50 plus years, hopefully. Um, and when you do that, it's like, uh, you really want to think about it, very carefully, like, exactly how, we spend a lot of time, exactly how do we want this to be angled, and, like, um, and where exactly in the clearing do we want to put it? And you think about that stuff, you know, pretty thoughtfully, and you do it pretty carefully, because it turns into literally concrete reality. It turns into concrete and metal and wood, and
oh my god.
like, stuck together.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Um, So
Yeah,
that
probably
feels almost
it's getting pretty
that feels
concrete.
devotional. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it was like there was a moment, you know, it was kind of like, okay, we're pouring the concrete. Like this is it. This isn't, yeah, this is locked in. This isn't going anywhere. Um, and so yeah, it's like each post in the house, of which, you know, one has like 9, the other one has 15, and each one weighs, you know, 150 kilos or whatever. You know, it's just like it's a massive thing. Um, so so yeah, that and that, you know, just it was a it was a slow process. You know, I had to like I dug the holes by hand, and um, yeah, and it was just it really, it's like you can't rush it, and I don't really want to rush it. You know, I don't feel like it feels nice to just say there's no deadline on this. This is just happens at the pace that it's going to happen, um and I just enjoy going out there and, you know, really like kind of getting into the nitty gritty of reality. You know, just kind of like putting my hands right on physical things, and manipulating materials, and kind of making this pattern take shape. Or yeah, helping this pattern take shape.
I remember last year um, when you were living with me for a little while, which was a glorious time. I think it
Hmm.
was September. Um, well, it must have been because I think my birthday was involved in that.
Hmm.
Um, and um, you're it wasn't clear that you were going to be together with Alex, and you
Right.
were making travel plans, and we it was briefly a topic of yeah, maybe I'll come back next year, you said, and then I remember one for uh, a little half an hour or something, we talked about you talked about something along the lines of house building, and it was then sort of um ascribed to my place, and we fantasized for a brief moment about um well, what could we do with this? And when there was the moment there that where I had imagined, our four hands together in some construction processes, I was like, holy shit, there's a lot of energy there and a lot of potential, and that was a very joyful thought. And as you can see, your vision came true, just
Yeah.
across the world, and possibly more meaningful um, than messing with me in my dwelling. But I just thought of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good place. I mean, it's where I grew up. Um, and my parents bought the land in the 70s. You know, they were part of the Back to the Land hippie movement, and they worked really hard to pay it to pay for it in those days. Even though now it's like, I mean, it's worth at least 20 times more. You know, it's just the value of land has gone up so far, that it would be very hard to get. I mean, if you could even buy a piece of land like that, it would be hard to afford it. But so yeah, there's a sort of generational wealth that we're tapping into, and you know, with my parents and my godbrother, his wife, their kids, and they live right next door, and so it's like we have this, you know, we garden together, um, and we have meals together sometimes, and we babysit the kids, and yeah, it's just like it's like a little community, which is amazing. Uh, and I'm surrounded by a lot of people that I grew up with, and um, you can't replace that. It takes, you know, it's like you can't grow up with different people. Um, you can't replace 40 years of experience with somebody, except by taking another 40 years to do it. So, so yeah, there's just an immense wealth that uh, that we have access to, and you know, when we talked about where we might settle or live for a while, Alex was like, she kind of wanted some community, and I was like, well, oh, I have that, you know, I've already got that. Like, we don't need to go anywhere exotic to find community. Just need to go in and hang with my family.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I think wealth is I think re- the word wealth deserves a bit of reclamation. I think when it comes to I've got my little feng shui in this place, and this curtain behind me, the one that I closed so
Yeah,
I'm not getting backlit, um, is the purple corner of wealth. They have an extremely vital orchid there that's purple. That was my little artifact. But I also have, which can maybe also be seen in the video, these pictures on this corner wall of my friends, and it was for me pretty obvious that wealth comes in many forms, but the true form of wealth are long-term relationships. And like you
yeah,
said, you can't buy that, and you can't even get that. Um,
yeah.
the only the only way to, well, getting is like strictly the wrong word, but the only way to
Right.
to have that is long years of devotion and attention to people, and then also sort of, which I'm sure you guys are dealing with. Um, I'm sure Alex. I mean, I'm sure both of you, but I remember talking briefly with Alex about this. Uh, the devotion and the sacrifice that comes with it, because if you're in in the thick with people, um, and you've got nowhere to go, you're a somewhere, not an anywhere, in this sense, and you're where you are, then you also
Mhm.
have to deal with them and have a lot of acceptance and be ready to maybe have some fights or whatnot. Is that something you guys are experiencing?
Not really, no. I mean, I think everybody just gets along really well. Um, my parents are already very attached to Alex, and vice versa. And yeah, I don't think so far there hasn't been a lot of conflict about anything. It's definitely, I think it's more, there's more of a conflict with maybe our non-human neighbors, because it's like we have all kinds of we're living in spaces right now that aren't, we're sleeping in the bus that my parents bought for $250 and had hauled out into the woods just after they bought the land. They were like, they just couldn't wait to live there, and so they got this broken down bus and had it towed out there, and sort of fixed it up as a living space. And and so we're sleeping in that now. It got renovated in like 2009 or 10. But yeah, so we're sleeping in this old bus, and then we, in the mud house, the wattle and daub house, we're doing our um cooking and eating and relaxing. And neither of these places is perfectly tight again from insects and animals, and there's lizards that come in, and um wasps and spiders, and um so for me, I just, they don't really bother me very much, most of them. There's a few kinds of species that I don't like, but there's ticks. We also have ticks. So every night we have to inspect each other carefully to make sure there's no ticks on us. And um it's so there's dealing with that, which I think has been a bit of an adjustment for her. um and she's gotten more okay with spiders than she was. I often have to, wasps can be annoying. I often have to catch them and throw them out, but then I get to be the hero like many times a day, so it's nice. Uh, but yeah, just just like, we're sharing the space with other. There's, we had carpenter bees. There are these bees that like to drill holes in wood, and so we had a ton of them because
Yeah.
when the space wasn't being used, they were just in there nesting and everything, and they got used to it. So we had to put out traps for them, and yeah, ants obviously want to come in. Um, so you just have to learn to get along with those with those neighbors, and that's a whole nother, so that's probably been more conflict there around that than with people.
Yeah. And mm, yeah, maybe a little question about your um, I think we talked little bit about it when we were together, but I think it's good to catch up on it because um, your recent history is quite interesting because you went um, sort of on well, it's it, when I heard. Let me put it this way: when I heard how strong your family ties are back home, having only known you as sort of this rugged traveler, it was quite a surprise. Not that it's impossible, but it was just a new dimension to your life. And then
Yeah.
also, yeah, having met you as this traveler and spent some time along you, the Hinterlander with the tarp and the and few belongings and um, yeah, maybe you can tell a bit of a little bit of your backstory, which also includes finding teapot and these special connections that were made along the way. Maybe from when you
Yeah.
went onto your motorbike journey.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was, as I said, I kind of moved to the city to, well, like a small city nearby. I moved there to sort of find my own path independent of my parents, and I was just sort of, I guess, a little distant with them during that time. But then in 2020, and like the about this time, 2020, so that would have been about 4 years ago. Things sort of My marriage collapsed, and it was like, I and we it's like neither of us was really in a position to buy the other out of the house, and so we kind of sold it, and and uh and then it was like, that was during the pandemic, so I didn't really have a place to go, and I kind of didn't want to I didn't want to just move into an apartment and like lock down. I kind of wanted to be outdoors, and I had a bunch of grieving to do as well, and so but it was at that time I kind of realized, wow, these people are still like my parents and my god brother and his family and all these people that were just like, I'm like, wow, these people are loyal to me. Like they're still supporting me. They're still there for me. Um, and so I sort of, I moved back out to my family's land. I traveled around a little bit on a scooter, and then I moved out to their land for a few months. But it was in the winter. It was very cold and wet. And because of concerns about COVID, I was like, didn't really have a house. Um, so and then that was when I sort of cooked up this dream of traveling around the country on a motorcycle. This motorcycle kind of came into my life that had a long history. It was a 1968 Honda CT90 with a lot of history, and had seen a lot of use. And I sort of restored it, not to like any aesthetic standard, but just so it would go reliably, and took off. And so that's what I did in 2021. I was kind of like riding around a big loop around the United States, and
Do you think
and I
quick
think.
interruption? Do you think it's worth telling
Mhm.
the motorcycle story, like how it came to you? Isn't that like quite a interesting story?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I was over at, so there's a friend and neighbor of mine who has a garage which he built, years ago, and it's just kind of a community garage. Like, everybody in the neighborhood just goes there and works on their car, and it has lifts and all the tools, and then sometimes he works on people's cars for them, but it's kind of a hobby. He's not a professional at it, and so I was hanging out over at his garage, and I said, I would love to like ride around the country on a motorcycle, like a small one. He's like, "Oh, what were you thinking about?" And I said, like some kind of Honda C90, And he said, "Oh, a friend of mine has one of those that was found at the dump, and it had been bouncing around for years. Like uh, everybody thought it was too cool to throw away, but it also didn't run. So, it was like sat in a mechanic shop, and he took apart the engine and never put it back together, and then it was like in a sheep shed for several years, and um, but, we called this friend of his, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, please get it out, like, go pick it up immediately, get it out of my shed, it's just been taking up room for years." And, so I was gifted this motorcycle, um, and, I worked on fixing it up, put a new engine in it, um, fixed all the parts and replaced things and so forth. And then when I was getting ready to go on the road, I thought, "Well, wait a second, I need, like, a license plate for this." And to get a license plate, I need a title. And I didn't have a title. It didn't come with one. And so um, I was like, I don't know. The state's not going to let me register this thing without any proof that I own it. And so maybe I can't do this. And then I was looking through the paperwork that was in the box with the parts of the engine, and there was a book, a manual, and I flipped through the manual, and there was a piece of paper in there that was the original sales document from 1968. It was a sales slip from 1968, and it had a guy's name on it. And I said, well, like, let me just see if this guy is, if I can find him, And so I searched for him on the internet, and it turns out he's a local guy. My mom says, oh yeah, I know about him. Like, so and so is friends with him, and so forth. And so I started reaching out through this like social network. My mom basically like looked at all their people. They had mutual acquaintances on Facebook, and then I went through this list, just calling people, asking if they could put me in touch with this guy. And it was it was, and then it turned, and I finally did get in touch with him. And I also talked to a bunch of older folks along the way, which was great. And I finally got through to him, and the first time I called him, he thought I was trying to sell something. He hung up on me, and I said, oh, I'll just try one more time. And I called him and explained the situation. He was just delighted, tickled that this had happened, because they'd given up this motorcycle. He'd given away this motorcycle years before, and he's in his 80s. He's a Santa
Yeah.
Claus. He's retired now, but he was a professional like Santa Claus guy. Like he looks like Santa. Huge white beard, blue eyes, like um looks exactly like Santa. So yeah, so he was just like, well, I said, well, can I just pay you something for the motorcycle? He said, well, let this be my Christmas gift to you. And so he kind of gifted it to me. But then it turned
From
out,
the literal Santa. The literal
yeah,
Santa
that's
gifted
right.
it
That's
to you.
right. Santa Claus gave it to me. It was
Oh.
around Christmas too. This was in December, I think.
Was it red?
And
Was it a red C90?
it was a red motorcycle, red and white, red with white trim.
Bro, I've never looked in your previous tellings of motorcycle stories. I've never looked at Honda C90. This is a
Uh,
small ass motorcycle.
yeah, it's a
This,
CT90. So not a C90,
oh,
it's a CT90.
CT90. Okay,
But
okay.
it's the
Let me.
same one, but it's a trail version,
Ah,
so it goes off road.
right, right.
Um,
It looks a little bit more sturdy.
it
C90
it
looks like a toy, but
it's
still, yeah.
they're both extremely sturdy, actually. I mean, you can carry one.
Great.
It's one of the few motorcycles where you could put another one on the back and carry it. Like it has a
Wow.
400 kilo load limit. I mean, it's like, is that right? 400 kilo? Maybe 200 kilo. I think it's got 200 kilo load limit. It's just it's a lot. I mean, you can put a rider plus the motorcycle on the back if you wanted to. Um,
Amazing.
yeah, it's a great. They're great.
So,
Really well built machines. Yeah.
uh, yeah, yeah. So Santa gifts you in 1968 Santa.
Yeah.
No, Santa who bought a CT90 in 1968
Yeah.
gifts you the red and white Christmas around Christmas. So that's pretty good.
Yeah. 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 No, it was great. In the end, it turned out like that I didn't need the title because uh somehow I don't know, there was something with the records where like some record got destroyed, and I got very lucky basically that I could actually get a license plate on it. But yeah, so I that motorcycle, I rode it. The thing is, they're not made for touring, and I was sort of mistreating it in a way, like just having it running high RPMs for all day, days on end. um and so by the time I got to Montana, it was not running anymore. And so um I left it there. I gave it to a teenager, and I bought another one that was like the same. It was like a 1971 model, which is had actually a lot of improvements. And it had been like lovingly restored. It had original engine and everything. And I rode that the rest of the
Mm,
way. Uh, so it was about 5,000 miles each on each, 8,000 kilometers, I think, on each one.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I still have that one. It has the same kind of problem, but I think it's worth fixing at some point when I get a chance. But then, but by the end of it, I was just kind of like, okay, I'm done. It was very exciting. I loved almost all of it, but and I saw a lot of the country that I never would have seen otherwise, because it has a top speed that's not very high. I mean, you don't want to really go on big roads. So I went on small roads. I saw a lot of small places, sort of a side of the country that most people don't see. And and so it was really valuable. But by the end, I was like, I'm just done being on the road. I don't want to be around cars so much, and decided to do a walking trip next. Uh, so that was kind of the end. I did I rode a motorcycle for hundreds of hours, and then I was like, okay, I'm full. I've for now. I don't really need to do this anymore.
And this was obviously still, if I understand this part of the story right, still very much a sort of a late coming of age story for you, right? Because, or I mean,
Yeah.
late is very relative. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, all of this was a journey to maturity. I mean, riding a motorcycle was a fantasy I'd had for a long time, and my ex wasn't too keen on it. She kind of shut it down. Alex isn't too keen on it either, actually, as it turns out. Um, but yeah, it was good. It was good to do that, to have done that, and I think I came up against a lot of things. Um, just dealing with a cranky old machine, and doing maintenance, being like really diligent about maintenance and taking care of something, really taking care of something, and not just um and on one level I was abusing it. On another level, it was like I was lovingly shepherding it through the journey. And um
You can lovingly abuse things.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, just the that sort of learning patience, the kind of stuff that he talks about in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, is really true. You just you can't, you just have to deal with frustration. You have to be patient, um, and you have to be diligent. Uh, and so yeah, I learned a lot, and also just also kind of just relaxing. Like I think I used to catastrophize a lot and spend a lot of my mental energy thinking about what could go wrong and how could I prevent that from going wrong, and maybe I can plan my way out of this, or that. Um and it just like, stuff went wrong and it was fine. And that happened enough that I was finally just like, you know what, this is all right. It's like I yeah, I might break down somewhere, but if I do, then it might be exactly what's supposed to happen. Like, it's an opportunity to meet somebody who then helps me out, and people love to help people out. I mean, I would be lots of times I would have, be like doing some maintenance in a parking lot or on the side of the road, and people would stop by, motorcycle people. They would say, "Oh, can I help you out? I've got tools at my house." Uh, so, just a lot of people were just extremely nice and helpful. And I was like, it's gonna be fine. Like, I'm not gonna die, probably on this thing. And it was also, I think it was also like it was also this cultivation of awareness, because, like, really, I mean, retrospectively, I think it was sort of a meditation practice, because I had always had anxiety. I actually got my driver's license just so I could get a motorcycle license, and I had no interest in driving cars, but I was always had a lot of anxiety about driving, about not about myself, but about endangering other people. And on a motorcycle, it was kind of like, well, I'm not really endangering other people that much. It's just mostly me. And so
Yeah,
it took off that pressure. But then also it was like,
certainly.
yeah. But then it was like, it was also like that. Well, and there was some fear that I would die in this way, and I thought about it, and I thought to myself, well, if I stay aware of everything, it's very unlikely that there's going to be a problem. It's just like most accidents are caused by a lack of awareness, and I was just like, I need to
Yeah,
have presence and awareness at all times, and not think, not daydream, not think symbolically, not just like completely uh, be in the mode of like what's going on around me at all times. And and a motorcycle is just a fantastic. I mean, it's like, it's like mindfulness or death. That's kind of like how I thought of it. Like,
yeah.
be mindful or die. And
I,
um,
I've got
yeah,
something to say about this too.
yeah,
Um, so I'm a very passionate driver, as you know.
hmm
sadly, in the meantime, I had to give away my car because it was somehow attracting a lot of misfortune and
Mm.
associated costs. So
Mm-hmm.
it had to go to sleep for a while. I sent it back to its room until it calms down. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Um, um, I hope it's not, in fact, an arbiter of bad luck, but that's for another time. But I'm also a very passionate cyclist in the city. So I've started
Yeah.
cycling in London, right? So
Mm-hmm.
left hand side, not my natural side of the road. Growing up and learning to drive in Germany, and
Yeah.
then little, very fast, very light, um, kind of adventure bike, racing bike, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of very tall buses in London, and never a problem. No, no,
Yeah.
and I'm not even once, and I'm like, people. Of course, I hear the narrative from people. It's like, oh, I could never,
Yeah.
and how do you, and blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, well, and so it never dawned on me until I had an argument one time with, or a conversation that had an argumentative slant and had a very weird bit, which was with a friend of mine. We're not really friends anymore. Somehow, after this conversation, we have never seen each other, which might tell a story for itself.
Mm-hmm.
But he is also a bike rider, and he told me we the argument came about like banning cars from cities,
Mm-hmm.
and it was sort of I met them randomly. We were eating some ice cream, and it was just not, and it was just this offhand kind of comment that I don't like. It's like we should just ban the cars from the cities, and I'm like, do you really know what you're saying? Do you really, or are you just like a bit of an entitled bike rider?
Mm-hmm.
It kind of pushed my buttons a bit because I'm both a bike rider, but I'm also a car driver,
Mm-hmm.
and and I was like, I've never had a problem with, you ride around them, you communicate, no, no. But then he said the one thing. He was like, well, you know what's so annoying about like all the cars and stuff? I always have to ride with full awareness.
Yeah.
I was like, what? What do you mean you want to not ride with your full awareness? Oh, that's what people do. I couldn't believe it. I was like, that's what people do. People ride a bike. In Austria, cars are classified as lethal weapons.
Yeah.
So if you kill somebody with a car, like, I mean, or I don't know how it plays out legally, but basically, if you're driving a car, you're handling a lethal weapon and you're like
Yeah.
judged accordingly.
Yeah.
And obviously that's true. And so you're
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
on your fucking dainty ass two-wheeler around a bunch of 2-ton lethal weapons, and you're like not using your full awareness. I was like, okay, now it makes sense. And then I realized, okay, I'm like, I'm a good driver and I'm a passionate driver and bike rider because it just ADHD, like slonks my full awareness, and
Yeah.
it's like perfectly situated in this game of driving, and it's just extremely natural for me. But
Yeah.
that's not the case for everyone. So
Yeah.
huge epiphany for me. I mean, also hilarious for me.
Yeah.
Well, after this energetic story, I seem to have lost the Hinterlander. Okay, and we're back. Little disconnection. After I told my energetic, apparently people don't use their full attention while driving or riding. Um, yeah, did you have any response to that, or I mean, because you brought it up, right? That you noticed that you won't die if you use your full attention
Yeah.
or awareness.
Yeah. 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 And at least, oh no, it's starting to rain maybe.
Okay,
Let's
we
see.
can have
Okay.
this on the
Need to
recording.
move slightly.
Authentic Hinterlander
Yeah, it'll
experience.
just take a second. Here we go. Yeah, I'm like, okay, here we go. There's a little portico thing. This will even make the signal stronger. Okay, here we are. Yeah, well, I think it just wound up being a um a good experience for me to be to cultivate that kind of awareness. Before that, I had been, I would sort of, I guess, dissociate or daydream, just go off into my head, and I just realized like that could be deadly if I was driving. And so I thought, well, I have to stop doing that. I have to stay in the moment. And then I got just hundreds of hours of practice at it. And and it's like, and there's a lot to be aware of on a motorcycle too. I mean, I think you smell everything, you hear, you smell better, you hear better, you see better. It's just you don't have a big box around you. Um, yeah, so it was, I think that in itself was a really great experience. I mean, I just got a lot less anxiety, became a lot calmer and more, um, you know, slow and methodical, and so it was good. The whole I feel like this whole journey, all the my travels have been just a gradual maturing, and I was drawn to the kind of things I needed to do at that time to get to the
Yeah.
next stage, I guess. So at some point I was like, well, okay, I've had enough of this motorcycling thing. Um, and then I transitioned to a walking trip. So the next year I was walking. So that was 2022. Um, I was I did a walk that was 800 or 900 miles, like 1,300 kilometers maybe. Um, and and I was pushing all my stuff in a cart. And that was really nice because I wasn't for the first part of it, I was walking alongside the road, but mostly it was walking on away from cars completely. And that allowed me to actually book like I was still present, but I think I spent a lot of time composing poetry in my head and thinking about blog articles, this sort of thing. Um, and so it was a completely different kind of journey, one where I wasn't locked into the needs of a vehicle. I wasn't locked into the needs of staying alive in traffic and so forth. And I was just able to let my imagination float around. It was a very creative time. I was writing a lot. So yeah, that was a very different kind of journey, that I feel like I was able to mature in a different way. Very contemplative and slow. I mean, walking is just it's slow. It just takes time, and I would just walk. Many days I would just walk all day, from shortly after sunrise to sunset, and loved it. I mean, it felt great. It's just it takes a while, but on the other hand, it's quite easy. You just, I mean, if you can do it, you just put one foot in front of the other and
As a walker
keep on
myself, I
repeating.
approve this message. And yeah, actually, having
Yeah,
walked with you a lot, and me in my circles probably being the most enduring walker that I know. Not that I walk with many people all the time, but I'm a strong walker.
yeah.
And yeah, definitely noticed that you're a way more practiced walker than I am. I was like, damn, this man can walk. It's a joy always to walk with you. And one note, I think, just
Yeah.
for the story that makes it very interesting for me that I happen to know is that I believe, I happen to know that during both the motorcycle trip and the walking trip, you were working a job, right? You were working as a software developer still.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so during the motorcycle trip, I was working, 5 days a week. So I was working full time, and my rhythm was that I would ride on the weekend, um, basically, like, do ride all weekend, 2 days, and then I would buy a bunch of food, and I would go out to some kind of national park. Sometimes I stayed with friends, but often, I was in national forest, actually, where you can camp wherever you want. And so I'd ride out into a national forest. I would set up a campsite. I had solar power. I would find some water source where I could filter water, and then I just wouldn't leave all week. So I would spend the week there, working during the day, and then I would at night, or in the evenings, in the morning, sometimes would walk around and explore the place, and and then I would start over and move to the next place, and yeah, that was kind of my rhythm. And then every now and then I would take off like a 5-day work week as a vacation and just ride for 9 days straight and cover like a whole bunch of ground, just camping for a night. at a time and writing the rest of the time. So I did that I think twice, to do a big jump from like Montana down to Las Vegas, and then I did a jump from like Los Angeles to Florida. Honestly, gosh, no, wait, I stopped in Louisiana. Yeah, Louisiana to Florida. Yeah, I did like a long run there, but but yeah, no, um, so yeah, I was it's crazy to think now that I was doing that. But I guess I just it felt like I had a lot of time. I don't know. And then when I was walking, I kind of scaled back. So I was working I started working 3 days a week and walking for 4 days a week, and that was nice because I needed a rest anyway. I mean, when you're walking, you need 0 days now and then, and so that just built it in, and I would rest and work and my only cooking device was a tiny like 2-pound solar oven, and I cooked this kind of cornbread in it, and so I would stop and like cook a bunch of bread and and then I would have my walking food for the next leg. Um, yeah, but it was like the time when I had time to sit around and charge my batteries and cook with the sun. And yeah, so but and then I gradually have tapered down to now I work not a whole lot. I work sometimes as little as 1 day a week. So um and it's moved with the rhythm of my job as well. Like, what I've been working on has shifted, and now I've sort of like created a product and it's in maintenance mode, and I kind of um I fix bugs um and add new requests, feature requests and stuff like that. But there's not a huge volume to do right now, which is great because
Yeah, you have a house to
I need
build.
a lot of time
Yeah,
for house
I just
building.
thought that was amazing. To also, when we lived together, to see you just kind of zone out, or probably more like tune in to like your work from time to time. And I'm like, holy shit! Like, there's a whole nother
Yeah.
world out there. Jesse at work, and that was always a bit surreal.
Yeah.
And then when I heard that you were doing
Yeah.
this big trip, I was like, wow, romanza, uh, motorcycle romance, American dream, rugged free rider, and it's like, but 5 days a day, I'm using my motorcycle as a bench to put my laptop on, and I'm like, holy shit, that's hilarious. That's such a that
Yeah.
changes the painting, and but it's so cool because it's still it comes with so much agency. And um, just a quick side note about myself, these kind of living with you and having these moments where you're like, no, I just gotta work. I'm just gonna do this little work. I'm like, wow, um, great discipline. And obviously, well, obviously these trips and walks and rides of yours were, I mean, that's what a discipline is. Uh, to be like that, and like you said, sort of
Mm,
the traffic disciplined you into awareness. The bike disciplined you into a type of awareness, and the maintenance is discipline, essentially, like almost the equivalent,
right,
linguistically.
right,
And I've experienced a huge increase in
right.
discipline, being on a recent journey of, okay, I've got, gotta do some work, gotta earn some money. And I had this thought,
Yeah.
very strongly not too long ago, that discipline, like, I think discipline gets sold as like this value of attainment, of like, some whatever, David Goggins, you gotta be disciplined, like forward facing discipline. um I think that's
Mm,
like a hoax, because it seems to me that I see myself now looking back and being like, oh, haven't we had quite a disciplined week, and then it's not, well, obviously you set
mhm.
out with some intention to get some stuff done, but like, sort of, the picture, the story paints itself in retrospect. And then I was like, oh, I really did hit the gym on 2 out of 3 days where I wanted it, and I cooked for myself, and just having these rhythmic beats, um
Yeah.
of of doing, of engaging appropriately with certain things, and being like, huh, that was some discipline. But it seems to me
Yeah.
very apparent that it's a developmental and then therefore retrospective matter, just like a story is. It's not like you can really choose to be disciplined or something. I mean,
Yeah.
you can
I
try, but the proof is in the pudding after.
Yeah. I mean, this is why I prefer to think about it instead of using the word discipline. These days I think about it more as devotion, and I think that it's like when discipline implies, or I mean, the associations of the word are sort of like um, punishing children when they don't do what they're supposed to. This sort of like it has this era, military discipline. It has this era of like this era of punishment and force, forcing things, doing things because you have to, duty, etc. Um, and I think that there's certainly situations where that's called for and valuable, but I think when people are just like thinking about it as self discipline, like they need to whip themselves to work. I've been reading this book called The Man Who Listened to Horses by Monty Roberts. And it's a really interesting book. It came out in the 90s, and it's about this guy. I mean, it's an autobiography basically of this guy who was a horse whisperer. And he tells this anecdote, which I was reading last night, about how he was involved in quarter horse racing, and it's a kind of drag racing with horses basically. And he was witnessing this guy training the horses, and there's this thing called a starting gate, which is like a box that the horse starts out in, and then when the race starts, they open up the starting gate and all the horses can run out at the same time. And the way that the horse is, like, naturally it's scared of the starting gate because it's an unfamiliar object. So the way this guy trained the horse to be comfortable with it was he would walk it around the starting gate a bunch of times, walk it through, walk it through, walk it through until it got, sort of boring, like, this is nothing's happening here. Then he let it sit in the starting gate and closed it in and put some food in there. The horse was, like, comfortable. It could see its friend. Its friend was, like, right outside. Then he would walk the friend down a little bit down the track, and he would open the door, and the horse would, of course, walk out to join its friend. So then he would, okay, put the horse back in, move the friend a little further down the track. Now the horse runs out. Then he puts the horse back in and moves the friend further down the track. Now the horse really goes for it, just like takes off galloping towards its friend. And pretty soon, that's what the horse is associating with the starting gate. It's like it opens, the horse runs out. Well, apparently the way that people normally trained horses to start quickly, the prevailing wisdom at the time, which was this in the 40s, was they would put the horse in the starting gate and whip it, and the horse would associate it with terror, and it would be,
Or it would
whenever
be
they
running
would put the horse in
away.
there, it would be anxious to get out because
Ah.
it associated that with experience. Yes, because it associated that experience with being whipped. So he talked to this guy that was doing the sort of gentle training, and he said, "What's your theory on this? Like, what how did you come up with this?" And the guy said, "Well, I was watching the horses really carefully because people bet on this sport." So he said, as you do when you have a bunch of money riding on it. He was like, "I was watching the horses very carefully," and he said, "I noticed that the horses that left the gate fastest were the ones that were calm. The horses that were terrified didn't notice that the gate is open until for a little while. They were too fixated on the fear to notice that the gate had opened and they could go. And so the horses that were motivated by this like fear and anxiety were just not actually as fast out of the gate. The whole theory of this thing was wrong. The horses that were fast out of the gate were the ones that were waiting calmly for it to open because they associated that with like j- running, doing something that is naturally pleasurable for a horse, and being around other horses, running with a herd, running with their friends. And so I don't know, just like that anecdote, it made me think of that because this idea of discipline, we think like, oh, if I whip myself harder, then I'll work better or I'll work faster or whatever. And I just don't think that's true. In my experience, it's kind of like a lot of the time is trying to work that way is spent kind of wrestling with yourself, and being um and so it's like to me it's like the that's why I would say that to me strikes me as discipline, like you're whipping the horse in the, you know, um to get it to go out of the gate. And it's like whereas devotion is like really understanding, okay, there's something here that I want. If you want to go to the gym, it makes you feel good. You want to cook for yourself, it makes you healthier, and it feels good, and so forth. Then you just do those things. You devote yourself to taking care of yourself. It's not a discipline. You didn't make yourself go to the gym. You didn't make yourself cook for yourself. You have devoted yourself to things that um to goals that it just makes sense to do that given that goal. Um and that's what, coming back around to the construction thing, it's like I have made the mistake before of kind of treating a project, well, after once I finish this project, then I'll really live, like then I can relax. Then I can just, then I can just totally kick back. And it's like, but then it puts all this pressure on, and it's like every day I'm, going out there, I'm like, okay, what percentage of this have I done? I have 24 foundation holes to dig. I go out, and in a day, I could dig 4 if I work hard, and I can dig 3, and that's pretty reasonable too. Is like no big deal. But like, I would dig 3 holes, let's say, and be like, wow, there's another 21 holes to go. I mean, just like you think about that as a percentage, and it's like, wow, that was a whole day. I'm, exhausted. Um, and there's a lot more of this to do. You start thinking that way, like progress, and it's unpleasant. It leads to burnout. And I think whereas now it's like it's more like, oh, this is a devotional practice. Like I don't go out there to build because I want to have a house sooner. I go out there to build because I love building. Because like it feels good to put that energy into my future and Alex's future, and just to have this a place, make a place that will support a and nourish us in a good life. That's what I'm devoted. That's the thing that I'm devoted to, and so I don't have to like whip myself to get myself to work. It's like genuinely wake up in the middle of the night thinking about construction details and like imagining what I'm going to be doing the next day. It's looking forward to it. Um, so that's not, I don't see that as, I
I
don't,
hear you.
I wouldn't call that discipline
That's an
necessarily.
interesting, maybe more linguistic or yeah, linguistic factor that I hadn't even taken into account. Because for me, discipline was always something that was very that I never associated with something bad. Actually, with something quite um, uh, uh,
Mm,
desirable to be a disciplined individual,
uh-huh.
representing discipline. And of course, I love devotion. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it
yeah.
has a way more heartfelt tone with it.
Mhm.
So I'm a devoted practitioner more than a liver of a disciplined
Yeah,
life. I could totally just take that. Um, but also wanting to point out that the
right.
discipline I've never had in my value system as something. The whole point was always how to achieve the state that discipline describes with love,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Without a
yeah.
whip. That's exactly what I'm saying. And
Right,
to me, that
right.
seems sort of
Exactly. Yeah,
this
yeah,
retrospective view on it seemed interesting to me because, um,
yeah,
yeah, like you said, just the mere setting out to like, dear horse, you're gonna be in the skate, you're gonna run really fast. It's like it's never gonna work. Like the key fact of the story
mhm,
for me was
yeah,
that the dude with the horse, the man who listens to horses, um, chills with the horse at the gate, and it's like, look, horse, this is your life now, and this is a gate,
yeah,
and it's haha, secretly
yeah,
quite important, but the horse doesn't know that, and it's just like, cool, like, what are we doing at the gate tonight, buddy?
yeah,
Tonight, buddy, and you're like, well,
yeah.
we're gonna have a lot of fun. You're gonna run to your friend, sometimes faster, sometimes slower. I'm gonna be really
Mhm.
nice to you,
Yeah,
and if I think this is also a
yeah,
big sort of, and exactly like you said, it's like you're not doing the house so you can relax. Like you will the place you're in, you're already living in the place where you're building the house, which I think makes so much sense. And it's not,
yeah,
well, at
yeah,
some point we will have this house and everything will be over. No, it will always be the same because a house you have to maintain, and maintaining is
yeah,
just continuing to build essentially. And the what you
Yeah,
pointed out in the
absolutely. Yeah.
beginning as well, the conversation with your surroundings will also never stop. You're out there in the forest, you're there with the elements,
Yeah.
you're there with the trees and the insects and the animals, and you'll always have to, um, just like with the people, uh, inshallah, all is always well, as you say, but
Yeah.
you're committed to that. You'll always have to negotiate and be
Yeah.
present with this, and there is no future reality or a reality that will be behind you. You're in the reality that you've chosen, and that is the now. And
Yeah.
for now, it looks like you're building, and later it will look like well, you're done building, but then you'll be doing a bunch of other shit, and it's qualitatively not much of a difference.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
and maybe one more thing with that,
Right.
with which I believe that also connects. It's like the whole thing about working, and I think that's a big teapot topic of like non coercion. Do I say this right? Coercion. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
that I definitely
Hmm.
have behind me, or well, I'm very much in the process of. Is like I am the guy who listens to the horse. Breaking news, I'm also the horse.
Hmm.
and the gate is my table, my desk,
Yep.
and I or my house, my flat, and
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
work to do, and it's like,
Yeah.
I'm just pulling myself by my little um whatever it's called, the horse leash kind of thing, bridle. I'm like, look, buddy,
A bridle.
this is your
Yeah.
place, and like there's cool stuff here, and like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
if maybe we can do some cleaning. And it's like, but you don't call it cleaning, just like we don't call it
Yeah.
running, because it's just like, look, there's your friend, or like,
Yeah. Yeah.
look, there's an apartment in which you can breathe well and
Yeah.
you're happy. And like, what could we do to move towards that friend, that friendly state, or look, here's your desk. What do you want to do? What do you want to? Just sit down. You want to sit down? You want to?
Yeah.
What? It's a bit boring. Do you want a coffee? So it's like, you're a bit stimulated, and it's like, I mean, I've spent years on this, and it's seems to be in a decent place now,
Yeah.
and literally also, for example, I'm in a co-working space with Roland, right? Positive Loop, and it's like I'm going to work. My friend is there. It's
Yeah.
like, yo, crazy concept, like as if that, makes it so easy to go. I'm gonna see my friend. How great is that? I mean, really makes a horse run, a good friend.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No, and I think it's like, right now I'm living a great life. I'm not deferring. I'm not like, slogging through something so I can have a nice things later. It's like, it's legitimately an awesome life. It's like we get great sleep. I mean, the great food. Like getting sweaty every day, swimming in the pond, um, to cool off, and it's wonderful. Um, and I know, like, and my parents, they lived in a bus while they were building their house. It took them 3 years because they were working jobs to pay for materials, and they would work for a while and then they could afford the materials. And also they were only using hand tools, which I had power tools. And yeah, it took them 3 years, but they look back on that time of living in the bus like it was really great. They really enjoyed that time. They're nostalgic about it. So I'm thinking like, yeah, well, you know, uh, there's some things about this that are going to be better than living in the house, and some things that I'll probably miss about it. And so it's like great to enjoy it while it's happening. And I think this is like, this idea that you're talking about of it, sort of, you're infusing your house with with an energy where it's like, yeah, this is fun. This is a place where I don't sit here to be stressed. I sit here to enjoy myself, um, to stretch my legs, to stretch my brain. Like I sit here um, to do something maybe challenging, but also enjoyable. And I think that it matters what kind of energy, what kind of vibes you put into a place. And this is also the other thing with the house. It's like the fact that I'm enjoying life while building it is to me a kind of key. is a key part of the process. I mean, this building is this extended spell, right? It's like this extended like physical spell with all these like, materials and tools and, um, some cement of Portland and, um, uh, lumber. It's just like it's like a recipe or something. You get these materials, you do these rituals, and then you make this thing, and all of that goes into the final result. I believe that all of those things sort of coalesce to make the final building what it is, and it would be different if I hired somebody else to do it, to do the work. It would be different. It would not be the same. They would do it. They would put different energy. They would put their energy into it, and maybe I don't know anybody who I want that to do that. It's like I want to put my energy in. And it's like this energy magnifier or something. You create a space just like you created your house as this sort of way to like. I was very inspired by staying at your house and seeing how you can sort of make this thing that's like it's a manifestation of who you want to be in a way. I think it's a manifestation of your best self, and so when you live in it, it kind of like there's a groove that you lock into where it's just like, yeah, this is how it sort of locks you into this, not locked, but it makes it easy for you to drop into the groove of who you want to be because you've created a context that supports that, and that like is full of that sort of energy. And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to do. It's like I don't no nobody gets to touch it that's not bringing the right kind of energy. That's the idea. I don't there's no not I'm not bringing in heavy equipment. I'm not I don't want that. I don't want speed. I don't want hurry to be a part of it. And so yeah, I don't know. I guess that like to me it ties in a bit with the work because it because really the it's not so much about like pushing yourself to do the work. It's about creating a context in which doing the work is is easy, is pleasurable, is sort of like accomplishing the goals that you want to accomplish, being the way you want to be,
That's right.
creating the life you want to
That's
live.
exactly right. It's um putting the cart in front of the horse. No, I don't know. It's sort of like
Yeah.
no, I guess it's actually putting no, there's some sort of good analogy here that I don't have ready right now. Something with the horse and the cart. But let's see, maybe we can
Uh-huh.
find it because the what you said about me in my place, I think I know what you mean, and I remember what I thought when it clicked between me and this flat, which is, as you know, a huge part of my story. It was
Mhm.
the primary word that unlocked this was the word interface, and I thought, well, every
Mm.
corner in a house is sort of a place, right? Every artifact, everything lives, and everything wants something from you. Um, that's also what I almost wanted to throw in, but our connection is maybe not so good for throw-ins. But you were talking about you and your how you conceptually want to be with the house, and one word that came to me was also serving. Like you said something, you want it to be a place
Mm.
where you can live and you can stretch and you can be who you want to be. And then I think there's also the knowledge that just like with a person,
Yeah.
a house is uh, a living being. Um, it gets me a bit
Yeah.
emotional because also the way that you describe your building process. It's these houses, these projects. They're like children. Like people, just like the horses. You just
Mm.
can't rush
Yeah.
it. It's as I would say, highly
Yeah.
illegal. Like nothing is done well rushed. Not even a running, as we saw. You're right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and
Yeah.
you want to be. You need to know that yeah, things need devotion. You're saying it right. And you need to serve them, and then they serve you back. And in the case of a house, it's like, okay,
Yep.
exactly, who do I want to be in here? And I've very consciously set up like consciously and very unconsciously, right? It goes both ways. Set up places here that where I'm like, aha, there's this Faust thing, right? Hier bin ich Mensch, hier kann ich sein. Here I am human, here I can be, and here I can be. And it's also the thing from the village, which is
Yeah.
like, okay, this is my desk to do this kind of work. This is my desk to do another kind of work. Then there's a whole area that I almost never use, but friends always use it. There's a huge part of this room that, as you know, is
Yeah.
I don't really sit on my couch, but friends sleep on it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I hope to have a couch
Yeah.
one day that invites me to sit on it, but it's not currently there. And so on. And so to have these interfaces and to be like, what do I want from them? Also, most importantly, of course, a kitchen, that kind of, and then sort of creating grooves, because grooves are a physical term, right? Like it's a sort of like a groove in a road or something, right? It's a dent, sort of, right?
Yeah.
Something like a path,
Yeah.
like where things.
Yep.
So
I mean, we say a
yeah,
rut,
that's a
but it's
bad
like that
groove.
that has a negative connotation to be in a rut, Yeah, yeah. But I mean, but should it be? I don't know. It
Yeah,
depends
yeah,
on
yeah.
if you want
I
to be
guess
in a
so.
rut or not. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
a habit. I guess we say a habit or
But
something.
meaning that
Good
when you're
habits.
in the groove musically
Uh,
or physically, you're creating grooves by
yeah, yeah,
repeating
yeah,
behaviors and then setting the place up more and more. So then you're
yeah.
becoming then you're in relationship with the place, with one of these interfaces. And yeah, I mean, imagining the
Mm,
way you do this from
yeah,
the ground up and you design it, you think it. I mean, yeah, it totally gets me emotional. I mean, there's just, yeah, that's life, right? That's really wow.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I love that idea of an interface. Like it's sort of, I mean, in a way, every tool, everything that we handle, or like all the artifacts that we create are all like an interface to reality in a way. I mean, it's something that a house kind of like a
Yeah,
house basically
certainly.
just tells the rain to go around, and the wind. It tells the wind and the rain to go around. It's just like,
Yeah.
hey, there's somebody living here. You need to like pass by on the outside of the wall, um, and you need to drain this way. And that is it's another thing I've thought about while I was building, is just kind of like how everything is communication. Like I was driving stakes into the ground, and I was thinking about how you drive a stake, and if you leave the end of it flat, and you try to pound it into the ground, it won't go. It's just, it sort of, it tells the dirt, like, go down. You hit it with the hammer tells the stake, go down. The stake tells the dirt, go down. The dirt is like, I can't go down. I don't have anywhere to go. There's not there's more dirt under there. I can't do it. And so like the stake doesn't drive. Then you sharpen it, and it's like, now when you hit on the hammer with the stake, the stake set you say to the hammer says to the stake, go down. The stake says to the dirt, you need to move out of the way
Yeah.
a little bit, move to the side. It's sort of a little bit of a more polite, and it like moves the dirt to the side, and then the stake
It knows which
moves into the
space it
ground.
can take
Um,
without having to tell the dirt
but
to go away so much, because it can actually go by itself. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's more polite. It's being more polite to the dirt, and so it's just sort of moving it aside. And you have to be very like explicit and literal with dirt. It doesn't respond to English or German or anything. It just, you have to. There's only the language of force, and I mean that in the sense of like physics, not in the sense of violence, but like, although violence too, I guess. It's like that you are doing something violent to the dirt. You're disrupting the soil. I had to. I'm sure I tried not to, but I'm sure I killed some earthworms, and certainly cut a lot of tree roots, which I felt,
Ah, I,
um,
I know these guys. They can handle it. They're all
yeah,
right. I
I
know
didn't feel
these
great about
guys.
it, but yeah, well, yeah, they probably are, but this is why I asked,
Yeah.
this is why I sort of, thanked them for their sacrifice, all the trees, um, but yeah, it's a language of force. Ultimately, it's like it comes down to, and so it's like you can see all of that as an interface with reality. The hammer, the stake, all of these things are a way for me to communicate my desires to reality, and then it can reshape itself to to comply with those desires, to accommodate those desires, I should say. And it's like, there's different, you can make an interface that's more or less elegant, more and less polite. You can make something that feels good to use and something that doesn't feel good to use. Um and so yeah, it's like almost like everything that we create is like that. A house is definitely a very complex interface to physical reality. It's a
Yeah,
sort of
and this
very
politeness is
advanced
great,
tool.
because and I always I think in the realm of telling myself and telling people that there's a lot of that is to be applied to yourself, and I think that's also all
Yeah.
these things
Oh,
are like
absolutely.
big
Yeah.
teapot topics of coercion and whatnot, and politeness effectively, and being like, well,
Yeah.
if you don't want to sit on the desk, then think about it, what's on it, how it is, and maybe you need to sit elsewhere, maybe you need to change what it means, and you can do that by writing about it, talking about it. You can assign new meaning to things and take things away and move things around, and
Yeah.
I guess that's magic, that's spells too. mm. or
Yeah.
I think making these
Yeah.
things, creating these flows, creating these communications or communions, I think that's so good.
Yeah.
I want to give us a uh,
It made me think of like
uh,
the story of King Win's Busher, from, I think it's from The Way of Chuang Tzu, where the guy, the butcher, like never sharpens his knife, and the prince is asking him, well, how do you manage that? And he says, well, I cut in the void between things. I don't try to cut through the bone. I cut through the little spaces. The knife finds the spaces between the bones, and then
mm,
it just falls apart on its own. Um, then this is as sort of a lesson about, I guess, or I interpret it as a lesson about doing things in the most graceful and natural way, following along with what nature kind of wants to do anyway. Um, and politeness, respect. I think that comes into it. It's like, how can I do this in as gentle a way
word.
as possible,
Yeah, that's
even though it definitely requires violence. Like you're cutting up an animal in the case of Kingman's butcher. Or I'm cutting up the ground. Like it's just like, this is, I'm damaging. I had to cut down some trees and um, kill them, and it's like, I'm damaging the environment. I'm displacing the habitat of earthworms and insects and so forth. And that's just like, we kind of have to do that to live at some level. We have to make our own place in the world, but we can do it. We can
I
try to do
actually
it respectfully.
am
And
reminded of a walk that we did last year at Microsolidarity Summercamp, and I was strong. Maybe it was past the ritual that lost me my beard, and maybe something we can talk about now or another time. But I also still very much, maybe this leads us there. I still want to talk to you about love if we have some time. Um, and but maybe to the
yeah,
topic, and maybe then we can change it. Of this displacement, and we were walking, and we were barefoot hobbiting it, and yeah, I think it was right after the ritual. Now that I think about it, and I was like really thinking about, because that's the topic that you brought to the ritual, which is like, well, how can I use my my hands, my masculine creative
yeah,
power without being in danger of hurting um people, so it's the
yeah,
energy flows cleanly, and we shaved with my straight razor, with which I thought was a good idea to show that your hands are soft and have
yeah,
no hurting intentions, because with the straight razor it's very easy to hurt yourself. um uh
yeah,
and then we were walking, and
yeah,
I was
yeah,
thinking, pretty high from our natural trip, sort of, that we had through this ritual and the breath work, and then I thought, holy shit, like, I'm walking with my big ass feet on the ground, and like, I think I'm killing ants all the time, basically walking, and I'm like, whoa, like
Yeah.
if I account for that, then
Yeah.
I shouldn't be walking. But of course, that's not an option. So I'm like, okay, which other things are like that? Where
Yeah.
no, it's actually important that you do your thing, and things might, you might move
Yeah.
things around, but that's a natural thing, and things actually like to be moved around as well. Um, it can be renewing, it can be
Mhm.
annoying, but it definitely creates change, and change is natural, and sometimes we have no
Yeah.
choice. We gotta take a walk,
Yeah.
or that really changed my mind on this. Where I was like, okay, I can do.
Yeah.
I'm doing this anyway. I would be a hypocrite if I would be saying no. I don't want to do anything. It's like I'm doing stuff all the time. I'm having an impact on stuff all the time just by
Yeah.
doing this simple walk. So okay, I can accept this, and
Yeah.
that spreads out to other things. This
Yeah.
displacing from time to time.
Yeah, I think that's a big I think that's a big thing for me to has been a big thing for me to kind of accept m the inherent destructiveness of life, you know? Um, and I think, it's there's a when you observe nature, it's like, well, does a hurricane or a tornado or an earthquake, does a lot of destruction. We sort of don't assign that a moral value. We don't say like, "Oh, it shouldn't have that bad tornado shouldn't have, done this." It's like, well, that's just what tornadoes do, and it's like, um, and I think, with people, we hold ourselves to a higher standard, and maybe we should, I don't think we should just say like, well, whatever, people are going to do their thing, um, but I think the idea that we would hold ourselves to the perfection of angels and that somehow we're not going to harm anything, is kind of delusional. It's like even if you don't, the for example, I read recently about it, the story about a Jain nun, and it was like they don't walk on natural surfaces. They won't walk on the dirt, um, because there's creatures under it that they were or that they think that maybe they'll kill. And so they walk on,
Yeah, come on.
pavement, but it's like somebody built the pavement. Somebody put the pavement there, right? So it's like, they're not eating animals, and they make really sure that there's no bugs in the food, but it's like, well, but
Yeah.
somebody farmed that, and like that farming displaced wild animals, and for sure it's like somebody is doing violence on your behalf if you're not doing it yourself. And like I think that's just something to be accepted as like for me, it's part of the process of maturing to an adult. Like, no, there's no perfection. There's no having perfectly clean hands. But what I can do is say, can I do something that's less destructive, and can I do more goodness with the destruction that I cause? Um, I actually have it have the most positive result that I can manage with my
And the
resources, my
ritualistic
creativity.
thanking of for the beings, whether you slaughter or you
Yeah,
fell. um somebody's got to die
yeah,
every once in a while, and it's just good to be like, hey man,
yeah,
thanks for moving out of the way, or for feeding us. It's
yeah. Which is different from an apology. It's interesting. At first, I wanted to apologize to the trees, and then I was like, wait a second, that's ridiculous. Like,
yeah,
what is that?
I'm
What
doing
what
it
good
with
is an
full
apology?
conscious,
It's more.
I'm not like,
I
oops,
think
sorry.
gratitude
I'm
is.
like, no.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Whoops. Yeah, it wasn't a mistake. It was like, no, I meant to cut down this tree. Um, but it's like, but I think gratitude is much more appropriate. It's like I appreciate that, you know, that you've died for
Yeah,
my
and
to make room
I
for
think
me,
between
basically.
humans, like, I really
Um,
like saying sorry, just very turn of phrase wise. Not that I don't mean it, but like just I think it really keeps the gunk
yeah,
out of the relational gutter, to just be like,
yeah,
oh, sorry, readily, to have it ready.
sure.
I grew up with some non-sorry sayers, and it's not the
Yeah, yeah,
greatest
yeah,
experience. Um, but there's something a bit more
yeah,
skillful, which is maybe a bit like, I appreciate that this might be a bit annoying to you, but this is what we're doing, and that's also kind of this
yeah,
gratitude,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
and like, hey, I feel that
yeah, yeah,
that this
yeah,
might not be your favorite thing, but okay, this is what a doctor, this is about to hurt basically, and then they're gonna hurt you, but they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, that's right.
But they're not really
That's right.
saying sorry,
Yeah,
are
yeah.
they? Right? I don't think so. They're like, this is gonna hurt a
No,
little bit. Get ready, and
no.
we're in this together,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
the
yeah,
and
yeah.
for those who don't like the terminology, I appreciate that this might hurt, but the masculine hand of movement and leadership sometimes, and like, okay, I'm just gonna take a decision. I don't know if I'm right, but like we gotta make a step somewhere. We gotta do something. No, no, no. Let's make something happen.
Yeah,
I think that's. I know that you and I
yeah,
discussed it at length, and we were both struggling with it on our respective paths. I think growing up in yeah, very like non-confrontational environments or whatever, or however we should define it, and I think many people around
yeah,
us are struggling with that. Um, and it's possible. I think it's quite possible that
yeah.
there's an underlying, yeah, fear of hurting or moving things into a suboptimal place, and then it takes what does it take, Jesse? Maybe courage and love, possibly.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, and I don't think like being harmless is enough, you know? I mean, I don't think it's possible, and then I think if it was possible, it wouldn't be
Yeah,
enough. It's like, great, now you have no impact on the world. Lovely. Like you could also be
it's
dead,
mid
and then
by
you would also have
definition, right?
no moral impact on the world, but, um, yeah. So it's like, let's talk about what we can do, to help, That's
Yeah,
the more interesting
that's
conversation, I think.
great. You know what? I thought about both considered taking a longer turn somewhere, but it's already 11:30 for me, and I feel such a great integrity in our conversation. And
Yeah.
um, part of my this, like, I don't know if you can notice, but like, I feel great right now. I love doing these. It's like such a sick way to catch up and to,
Uh-huh.
spit some cool stuff. And I want to say to myself also at this point that where I know that there are many topics to be explored. That for me, I want these podcasts to be a long game and to talk to you again and talk about different things. And I'm really pleased with this
Sure.
chat. I feel like it's a good part of your story. It's a good part of the current times, and infinite more to explore, but in favor of a good night's sleep for me, and I think my vocal cords and maybe yours as well. Maybe it's a good time to stop.
Yeah. Sure.
Very nice.
Yeah. No, it's been nice.
I'm very emotional today. I don't know why, um, but but um, yeah, the feeling of your devotional house building, it's beautiful, really. I would love to leave some
Mm.
last words to you, and whatever you want, but I thought maybe it's always good if it's a good spell or something magical or a message to the people for the moment. Won't be the last message to the people, but yeah, um, whatever you got.
Uh, gosh, I don't know. Um, yeah, many blessings, I suppose. Many blessings. Uh, yeah, I don't know what to tell people. I mean, it's like I'm to some extent, I feel like I've created the situation that I'm in, but to some extent, I think I'm just extraordinarily blessed to have fallen into it. It's like there's so much stuff that I didn't really have that much control over, and that I sort of decided to let go and of a lot of control, and it just sort of worked out in this beautiful way. Um, and so I don't know. I don't have advice. I don't really have a lot of advice about it, but I think um, that amazing things are possible. Um, letting go of control, letting the world, um, letting God, letting the universe, letting nature do its part, I think we can achieve a lot more than seems possible. If we try to force it, if we try to discipline ourselves, if we try to do it without love, you know.
Yes, sir. Many blessings. I approve this message. Yeah. Thanks, Jesse. I'll
Many
see you very
blessings.
soon. And I'm so happy that you're also coming to Tree Week. That's so cool. Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
Okay, let's talk
looking forward
soon.
to it.
And thank you for this. And see you very soon.